Okay, here's warm up 9.3. So I've got a triangle here. I've got 45 degrees, 90 degrees. This is going to be a 45, 45, 90. You could write an equation. All three angles would add up to 180. But yeah, if you have 45 and 90, the other one's going to come out to 45 as well. So I got 90 degrees right here, the other 90 degrees in the two acute angles. So that means that these two angles are going to be congruent. And therefore, this is going to be an isosceles triangle. So across from the congruent sides are going to be, congruent angles are going to be congruent sides. So y is going to equal 5. Okay, and then you could use the Pythagorean theorem to find x, and that would be totally fine. But in a 45, 45, 90, if you take the leg, these are my two legs here, if you multiply them by either one of them by the square root of 2, that's going to give you your hypotenuse. So just a little shortcut to get around the Pythagorean theorem. That will give you 5 root 2. And that's in simple radical form. I'm kind of checking to see if I can take out twins. That's how I do simple radical form. Okay, but that one's good to go. All right, so next up, this one's going to be a 30, 60, 90. These two angles add up to 90 degrees because there's my other 90 degrees. So 30 plus something is 90. This has to be 60 degrees. Okay. And I like to think about this. I've got two different legs, and then I've got my hypotenuse. So this is my hypotenuse. Okay, so this would be my short leg here. And then that means that this is the long leg, okay? And yes, I can tell just looking at it that one's shorter, but sometimes if you've got a drawing that's not to scale, you can tell the short leg is always going to be across from a 30-degree angle, long leg's across from 60-degree angle, right? Because the smallest angle is across from the shortest side, okay? So the relationship here, I always like to get the short leg first if I don't have it at the beginning of the problem. So with a 30, 60, 90, if you take the hypotenuse and you take half of that, that is going to give you the short leg. If you're going from short leg to hypotenuse, you double it. So going the opposite direction, we're going to divide by 2. So half of 16 is 8. Okay, and then once you have the short leg, well, we're going to be multiplying it. It's going to be getting longer to get the long leg. So we're multiplying it by something. And here we multiply it by the square root of 3. So that's just a relationship that you have to memorize. So x then is going to be 8 times root 3, or 8 root 3. Okay? So this one we wouldn't be able to do with the Pythagorean theorem at the start of the problem because we only have one of the three sides. And it's true, we only have one side here, but you can find that one if you realize that's isosceles. But here we'd be stuck. You have to know the 30, 60, 90 relationship then. Okay. So best piece to have is the short leg because you can multiply out to get the other pieces from there. Okay. Last problem here. Find the area, and we're going to use simple radical form again. There are a couple different ways to do a problem like this, and we'll get into another way later in the chapter. This kind of starts to suggest that way we're going to get into later in the chapter. But I'm thinking my formula for a triangle, for the area of a triangle, is 1/2 base times height, or base times height divided by 2 if you prefer. Okay? So whatever side I use as my base, it's going to be 10. So I'll just make the bottom be my base. So 1/2 of 10 times something, okay? But the height is not going to be 10 because the height has to be a perpendicular distance. And this would be an equilateral triangle, right? So I know that's not a 90-degree angle there. So my height that goes with this, with the 10 is going to look like that. It's going to be the perpendicular distance to the opposite corner, okay? So this is my height. I'm going to have to find that height somehow. And the key to that is realizing what the measures of the angles that I'm dealing with are. So this whole triangle is equilateral. All the sides are 10. It means it's also equiangular. So all three angles are equal. And if I think about all three angles, they all have to add up to 180 in the larger triangle. So it's going to have to be 60, 60, 60, as every equilateral triangle is. So I got 60, 60, and then the 60 at the top is actually going to be divided in 2. So you can figure out that those are both going to be 30 just by looking at this triangle as well, because I got 60, 90, so I need another 30 degrees to get to 180. So I got 30 here and 30 here, okay? And then what we have, these two triangles are congruent. So I know that because, let's say, I can say those are congruent, right? And then I can say reflexive property, that's congruent. Now I have hypotenuse leg. So these two triangles are congruent, which means the corresponding pieces are congruent. That means, in turn, that 10 is going to be split in half along the bottom into 5 and 5, okay? And now, looking at this half triangle that I just shaded, here, let me draw this separately. I can find h. And another way, actually, I could have found the 5 down there is I go from hypotenuse to short leg, like I did on the last problem, divide by 2, and that would give me the 5. Okay? But now I've got two options to get the h. I could use the Pythagorean theorem, that's totally fine. But also, I'm going from my short leg to my long leg. This is short leg, this is the long leg. So it's going to be getting bigger, because it's going from short to long. I'm multiplying just like I did here by the square root of 3. So h is going to equal 5 root 3. Same thing you'd get, 5 root 3. Same thing you'd get with the Pythagorean theorem, okay? And that's the missing piece I have up here in my area formula. So this is going to be 5 root 3. So, when you do these problems and get used to them, if it's an equilateral triangle, it's going to be cut into two 30, 60, 90s, and that bottom side is going to be cut in half. The base is going to be cut in half. Okay, so it doesn't take this long. Once you're used to doing these, you'll kind of see the pattern. Okay, so let's see. Half of 10, that's going to be 5. So I've got 5 times 5 root 3, and that's going to be 25 root 3. Okay, and that's in simple radical form. And I do want units here, so this is going to be square meters since I'm talking about area. So 25 root 3 square meters. Okay, and that's the end of the warm-up, and I'll see you next time.